On a warm and ordinary summer afternoon in June 1990, a woman wrote 4 simple words that would later become one of the most haunting messages ever connected to a missing person case in the United Kingdom, back in 2 minutes. Those words were calm, confident, and ordinary, and they were never meant to mark the end of a life lived openly and honestly in a close-knit community. Welcome to Hidden Truth, the channel where real stories are told slowly, carefully, and with respect for facts that refuse to disappear. Today you are about to hear a story that did not unfold in darkness or secrecy, but in full daylight, in a busy Welsh town surrounded by people, witnesses, and movement, yet hidden from answers for more than 3 decades. This is the disappearance of Trevaline Evans, a 52-year-old antiques dealer who vanished without leaving behind a struggle, a ransom demand, a body, or a single confirmed explanation. She left behind her handbag, she left behind her car keys, she left behind her jacket, she left behind plans for the evening, and she left behind a town that would never stop asking why. Who was the well-dressed man last seen speaking to her moments before she disappeared? Why did she step away from her shop for only 2 minutes? How does someone disappear from a crowded town center without being seen, stopped, or remembered clearly? As this story unfolds, every detail matters, because nothing here is random, and nothing here is simple. Stay with Hidden Truth, and subscribe now, because stories like this need patience, care, and curiosity to be understood fully. This is not just a missing person case. This is a question that time itself has failed to answer. Trevaline Evans was 52 years old in June 1990, and she lived a life defined by routine, responsibility, and visibility in the town of Llangollen in Denbighshire, Wales, United Kingdom. She was not isolated, withdrawn, or unknown, but a familiar figure whose presence was woven into the daily life of the town. She owned and operated Attic Antiques on Church Street, a location known for steady foot traffic from both locals and tourists, and her shop was more than a place of business, because it was also a place of conversation, recognition, and trust. People knew her by name, and many knew her habits, her working hours, and her calm and welcoming manner. Friends and customers described Trevaline as dependable, careful, and warm, someone who valued structure and took pride in consistency. She was not known for taking risks or making impulsive decisions, and those closest to her never described her as secretive or unpredictable. Trevaline lived with her husband, Richard Evans, and by all public accounts their marriage appeared stable and ordinary. There were no known reports of financial trouble, no public arguments, and no signs of emotional instability that would suggest a desire to leave her life behind. In the week leading up to her disappearance, Trevaline had been staying near the coast at Llangollen, where Richard was renovating the couple's holiday bungalow. This was not unusual behavior, and the trip was known to friends and family. During this time, nothing was reported that suggested tension, fear, or conflict. Trevaline returned alone to Llangollen on Wednesday the 13th of June 1990, and she resumed her normal routine without hesitation. People who saw her in the days following her return said she appeared relaxed and content. She spoke openly about everyday matters, about her shop, and about plans for the coming days. She did not give away possessions, she did not close accounts, and she did not speak as someone preparing to leave. These details matter deeply, because disappearances often carry warning signs, and in Trevaline's case, those signs were absent. There was no farewell behavior, there was no visible fear, there was no emotional withdrawal from her community. Saturday the 16th of June 1990 began exactly as expected. Trevaline opened Attic Antiques at 9:30 in the morning, following the same schedule she had kept for years. She parked her dark blue Ford Escort estate approximately 200 yards away, exactly where she normally parked. The weather that day was sunny, and the town center was busy with visitors and residents moving through the streets. Over the course of the morning, approximately 25 friends and customers visited her shop. Several later told police that Trevaline seemed calm, happy, and completely at ease. She talked casually about plans to go out later that evening, and nothing in her behavior suggested worry or urgency. This was not the morning of a woman preparing to disappear. This was the morning of a woman living her life as she always had. Sometime shortly before 12:40 in the afternoon, a man described as smartly dressed was seen inside Attic Antiques speaking with Trevaline Evans. Witnesses later said that he appeared well presented, wearing a blazer and behaving in a calm and confident manner. There was no sign of distress, no raised voices, and no visible argument. To anyone passing by or observing casually, it looked like a normal conversation between a shop owner and a customer or acquaintance. This man would later become one of the most important and mysterious figures in the entire case. At approximately 12:40, Trevaline stepped outside her shop and placed a handwritten note on the front door. The note read, "Back in 2 minutes." These words suggest certainty rather than hesitation. They suggest that Trevaline believed she would return almost immediately. Inside the shop, she left behind her handbag, her car keys, her jacket, fruit, and flowers she had planned to take home. These are not items a person leaves behind if they intend to disappear. Her car remained parked exactly where she had left it earlier that morning. There were no signs of a struggle inside the shop, no overturned furniture, and no indication that force had been used. After leaving the shop, Trevaline was seen buying an apple and a banana. Witnesses then observed her crossing nearby Castle Street. Later, a banana skin was found in a dustbin inside the shop, leading investigators to believe she may have returned briefly. However, this detail has never been confirmed, and it remains one of many small uncertainties in the case. What is known is that Trevaline did not reopen her shop. Customers who arrived later found it closed and unattended. As the afternoon passed, concern began to grow. Trevaline failed to return to her shop. She failed to return home. She failed to attend the plans she had discussed earlier that day. The last confirmed sighting of Trevaline Evans occurred at approximately 2:30 in the afternoon near her home on Market Street. Police consider this sighting reliable and accurate. After that moment, certainty ends. 2 additional sightings were reported but never confirmed. At 2:35, a woman matching Trevaline's description was reportedly seen walking out of town along the A5 towards Corwen beside the Riverside Park. At 3:45, another witness claimed to see a woman walking into Park Avenue from the direction of the River Dee. These sightings suggested movement and direction, but they could not be verified. By the end of the day, Trevaline Evans was officially missing. When Trevaline did not return home and could not be located, police launched an immediate and extensive investigation. Every household in Llangollen was visited and interviewed. Residents were questioned in detail. Visitors were traced. More than 1,500 names were checked as part of the inquiry. Approximately 700 vehicles were examined and eliminated. This was not a delayed or careless response. It was urgent, thorough, and wide-reaching. Search teams were deployed across the region. The River Dee was searched carefully. The canal was examined. Woodland areas were combed. Abandoned mine shafts and caves were explored. Dogs were used to track scent. Helicopters scanned the surrounding landscape. Despite the scale of the effort, nothing was found. No clothing, no personal belongings, no trace of Trevaline Evans. An artist's impression of the well-dressed man seen with Trevaline was created and circulated widely. The image appeared in newspapers and public appeals. Despite widespread exposure, the man was never identified. Years later, police stated that the image was no longer considered accurate, raising further uncertainty about whether this individual was ever correctly described. One critical detail shaped the direction of the investigation. Trevaline's bank accounts showed no activity after her disappearance. No money was withdrawn. No purchases were made. No travel arrangements were recorded. This strongly suggested that she did not plan to disappear and likely did not survive long enough to use her finances. Investigators increasingly considered the possibility of abduction and murder. Over the following years, the case generated tips, rumors, and hope. In 1992, Woodland in the World's End area was searched after a tip from someone claiming to be a spiritualist medium. In 1993, police searched a canal bank after a woman wrote stating she felt overwhelmed by a sense that Trevaline was nearby. These searches revealed nothing, but they show the emotional weight the case carried. The town waited, the silence deepened, and the question remained unanswered. As days slowly turned into weeks, and weeks stretched into months, the disappearance of Trevaline Evans became a wound that never closed for the town of Llangollen, because her absence was felt everywhere and in everything. The shop on Church Street that once carried her voice and presence stood as a reminder that something deeply unnatural had occurred, because people do not simply vanish from busy places without explanation. Police continued to examine witness statements repeatedly, often returning to the same accounts years later, hoping that time might loosen memories or reveal details that were once overlooked. Investigators focused heavily on the note left on the shop door, because those 4 words suggested certainty, calmness, and trust rather than fear or urgency, and this detail shaped much of the thinking around the case. The fact that Trevaline left behind her handbag, her car keys, and her jacket continued to disturb investigators, because these items represented independence, mobility, and security, and no rational person intending to disappear would abandon them willingly. The absence of a clear crime scene created enormous challenges for police. because there was no blood, no damaged property, no physical signs of violence, and no clear moment where Trevaline could be proven to have been harmed. This lack of physical evidence forced investigators to rely heavily on timelines and human memory, both of which are fragile and imperfect. The window of time between 12:40 in the afternoon, when Trevaline placed the note on her shop door, and 2:30 when she was last confirmed, seen near her home on Market Street, became the most critical period in the entire case. Every minute within that window was examined in detail, and every potential movement was mapped repeatedly, yet no witness could place Trevaline clearly at a specific location with certainty during that missing period. The unconfirmed sightings added further complexity and emotional strain. Reports of a woman matching Trevaline's description walking along the A5 towards Corwin beside the Riverside Park created a possible narrative of movement away from the town, while the later sighting near Park Avenue suggested a return toward residential areas. These conflicting directions made it impossible to establish a clear path or intention. Police treated these sightings cautiously, aware that human perception can be unreliable, especially when influenced by public awareness and emotional involvement. The town itself became part of the investigation in an unspoken way. Residents replayed the day repeatedly in their minds, wondering if they had seen Trevaline and failed to recognize the importance of the moment. Shopkeepers questioned whether a passing glance or brief interaction could have been the last chance to notice something wrong. Visitors who had been in Llangollen that day later questioned whether they had unknowingly crossed paths with history. This collective uncertainty created a quiet but lasting tension, because the idea that the answer might have been visible yet unnoticed was deeply unsettling. Rumors spread carefully rather than loudly because the town was small and closely connected. Some believed Trevaline had been lured away by someone she trusted, possibly the well-dressed man seen speaking with her shortly before her disappearance. Others believed she encountered a sudden threat that left no opportunity for resistance. Police worked to separate speculation from fact, yet they could not ignore the emotional power of public belief. Each reported sighting, no matter how distant or unlikely, was examined carefully, because even the smallest detail could have shifted the investigation. Reports emerged over the years from London, from areas of France where international authorities reviewed claims, and from a remote town in Australia where someone believed they had seen Trevaline alive. Each report briefly revived hope, particularly for her family, and each report ended in disappointment when evidence failed to support it. These repeated cycles of hope and loss added to the emotional toll of the case, not only for those closest to Trevaline but also for the community that had watched the mystery unfold year after year. As silence stretched on, the disappearance of Trevaline Evans became less about a single missing person and more about an unanswered question that refused to fade, because time did not erase uncertainty, it only deepened it. The longer Trevaline remained missing, the harder it became to imagine a resolution, yet the harder it became to accept that no resolution would ever come. In January 2001, more than a decade after Trevaline Evans disappeared, police officially reopened the case, driven by advances in forensic science and renewed determination to find answers. This decision sent a message to the public and to Trevaline's family that the case had not been forgotten, even though time had passed without progress. Investigators returned to original evidence, reviewed preserved materials, and reassessed witness statements with modern understanding of criminal behavior and investigative techniques. The reopening created cautious hope because new technology had solved cold cases before, and there was belief that something overlooked in 1990 might now speak. In June 2001, the investigation took a dramatic and painful turn when Trevaline's husband Richard Evans was arrested. The arrest shocked the town because Richard had lived under the weight of uncertainty and loss for more than 10 years, and many residents had known him personally. He was questioned extensively by police and later released without charge. Authorities stated clearly that there was no evidence linking him to Trevaline's disappearance. While the arrest did not result in charges, it left emotional scars because it reinforced how unresolved cases can pull innocent people into the shadow of suspicion. As the investigation continued, police explored other possible explanations. In 2011, attention turned briefly toward a convicted serial killer named Robin Llangollen, who had been sentenced for the murders of 3 men in 1994. The idea that Trevaline's disappearance could be linked to a known killer captured public attention because it offered a possible explanation for the absence of evidence. After careful investigation, police ruled out any connection. Once again, a possible answer dissolved under scrutiny. Media interest revived the case periodically, bringing Trevaline's story to new audiences. In 2021, Her disappearance was featured in a crime investigation podcast that examined the case in detail and presented it to listeners unfamiliar with the original events. In 2023, a television documentary suggested a possible link between Trevaline and Christopher Halliwell, a convicted murderer responsible for the deaths of Sian O'Callaghan and Becky Godden-Edwards. This suggestion was presented as unproven and speculative, and no direct evidence was found to support it. Despite this, the renewed attention reminded the public that Trevaline's case remained open and unresolved. For those who cared about Trevaline, hope became something fragile and exhausting. Each reopening promised answers that never arrived. Each theory offered closure that slipped away. The repeated return of the case to public discussion kept the wound open, because it confirmed that, despite decades of effort, the truth remained hidden. Today, Trevaline Evans is still missing. There is no body. There is no arrest. There is no confirmed explanation. The note on the shop door still echoes through time, not as a promise, but as a reminder of how suddenly ordinary life can fracture. The disappearance of Trevaline Evans remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in the United Kingdom, because it challenges the belief that daylight, community, and familiarity offer protection. More than 30 years have passed since Trevaline Evans stepped away from her antique shop in Llangollen and vanished from public sight. Yet the unanswered questions surrounding her disappearance remain as heavy today as they were in June 1990. Time has not brought clarity to this case, nor has it softened the uncertainty, because the disappearance of Trevaline Evans defies the assumptions people hold about safety, visibility, and ordinary life. She disappeared in broad daylight, in a town filled with people, during a moment that should have been ordinary and forgettable. And yet it became unforgettable because of what followed. She did not leave behind signs of fear, distress, or urgency. She left behind normal objects, normal plans, and a handwritten note that suggested she fully expected to return. The note on the shop door remains one of the most haunting details in the entire case, because it captures a moment of confidence rather than caution. Trevaline did not write a farewell. She did not close her shop for the day. She did not secure her belongings. She believed she would be gone for only 2 minutes. That belief forces the most troubling question of all, which is what happened during those 2 minutes that changed everything. Whatever occurred did not allow her to return, did not allow her to seek help, and did not allow her to leave a clear trail behind. That absence of evidence has shaped every stage of the investigation and every theory that followed. The unidentified, well-dressed man seen speaking with Trevaline shortly before her disappearance remains a central figure in the story, not because he was proven responsible, but because he was never identified at all. His presence raises questions about trust, familiarity, and timing. He was not described as threatening. He was not seen forcing Trevaline to leave. Yet his appearance in the final known moments before she placed the note makes him impossible to ignore. The failure to trace him has left a gap in the narrative that time has not filled. The confirmed timeline of Trevaline's last day continues to feel incomplete, because while certain moments are clear, the most important stretch of time remains unaccounted for. The final confirmed sighting near Market Street anchors the story in reality, while the unconfirmed sightings along the riverside and nearby roads stretch the imagination in different directions. These reports suggest movement, intention, and possible routes, yet none of them withstand the level of certainty required to establish truth. As a result, Trevaline's final movements exist in fragments rather than a complete picture. The lack of financial activity following her disappearance strongly influenced investigative conclusions, because it indicated that Trevaline did not plan to leave her life behind and did not live freely after vanishing. Her bank accounts remained untouched. No travel arrangements were made. No personal resources were accessed. This detail pushed investigators away from theories of voluntary disappearance and toward darker possibilities. Yet without physical evidence, even the most logical conclusions remain unproven. For the town of Llangollen, Trevaline's disappearance became part of its collective memory. Her shop remained a visible reminder of what had happened. Streets where she was last seen carried a quiet weight. Residents continued to speak her name long after national attention faded. The case changed how people understood safety, because it showed that familiarity and routine do not guarantee protection. It showed that danger does not always announce itself. It can arrive quietly, without warning, and leave nothing behind. For investigators, the case became an example of how the absence of evidence can be as powerful and frustrating as evidence itself. Every search that produced nothing added to the mystery rather than resolving it. Every lead that failed reinforced the silence. The repeated reopening of the case demonstrated commitment and persistence, but it also highlighted the limits of investigation. When key moments are lost to time, media revisits of the case brought renewed attention, but they also revealed how easily speculation can fill the gaps left by missing facts. Theories involving known criminals created temporary explanations, yet none were supported by evidence strong enough to bring closure. Each renewed theory raised hope before collapsing under scrutiny. Each return to public discussion reopened wounds rather than closing them. Trevaline Evans remains missing. She is not listed among those who were found. She is not remembered as a solved case. She exists in a space between presence and absence, where stories end without conclusions. Her disappearance continues to challenge the belief that every mystery can be solved with enough time, because sometimes time only deepens the unknown. Her story asks something of those who hear it. It asks for patience rather than quick judgment. It asks for remembrance rather than dismissal. It asks people to accept that some truths remain hidden, not because they do not exist, but because they have not yet been uncovered. Until that truth emerges, Trevaline Evans remains a name spoken with uncertainty, a life paused rather than concluded, and a question that refuses to disappear. This case is documented through official British police records concerning the disappearance of Trevaline Evans from Llangollen in Denbighshire, Wales, United Kingdom. The disappearance has been reported and examined by British Broadcasting Corporation News through multiple appeals and anniversary reviews. Investigative coverage was published by the Daily Post and the Telegraph, including interviews and historical analysis. Additional reporting appeared in the Mirror and the Denbighshire Free Press, particularly during renewed investigations. The case was revisited in the Crime and Investigation podcast episode titled The Disappearance of Trevaline Evans, North Wales. The story was further explored in the Channel 4 documentary series In the Footsteps of Killers. Factual timelines and case summaries are recorded in the publicly available Wikipedia article titled Disappearance of Trevaline Evans. If you believe stories like this deserve care, patience, and truth, then subscribe now to Hidden Truth, because every forgotten case matters, every unanswered question deserves a voice, and the truth never disappears, it waits.